So, button pressed. It's Tuesday.
Yes,
It's still the month of August. And it's
yes.
still me and my friend Dr. Pauline from the other side of the planet. And we are all still talking. We are having a conversation. We are sharing. We are acknowledging. We are discovering. We are unveiling. We are doing whatever it takes to tap into our history. We are owning it. We are rocking it. We are enjoying it. We are reflecting. We are thinking. We are inviting. We are, learning. It's just everything, isn't it, P? Isn't it just
Yes,
everything we're
yes,
doing here? Out of
yes.
intuition, like without a plan, we just get into it.
Well, that's the way the best conversations go, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, we welcome you. We see you. I don't even know whether YouTube is functioning. I haven't seen any one of these videos on YouTube, but the system says it should be on YouTube.
Okay, good.
But because we are out to do what we are called to do, we just go ahead and we do it.
Yeah.
So today is day 19. We're launching book 19 today. Wow, this has been quite a journey. We never did this before. And if you're joining us, we welcome you. We welcome you in the conversation. And if you're coming later, we also welcome you. If you're sharing this with anyone in your networks, we welcome you. We celebrate you. We appreciate you. My name is Ankrita Beatrice Achaleke. I am the author of the Africa for Smart Kids book series and the publisher of GloBUNTU Books. So I see my author, sister, friend, partner in crime, partner in conversations and book writing. She's showing you the title of what we're talking about today. It's all we're going after the question, what is enslavement? We're not saying what is slavery.
Yes.
We're saying what is enslavement. And I don't know if you get the nuance right here. So we have an academician. My studio host is academician. So she is a rhetorician. So she's going to break down what is the difference between slavery and enslavement for us. But we will also be having our conversation around that. And if our other friend, on the table, Lisa, joins us, we will welcome her. But until she comes, she's probably taking care of juggling between office work from home and her house chores and herself. So when she joins us, we will accept her. She's still on the road, but she will connect when she gets home. She's just texting me, so she's from somewhere. So in the meantime, you, P, my friend, we continue the
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling today, girl? We all have Bantu knots. We are
I
Bantu.
yes, yes. Um, this is my go-to hairstyle when I can't figure things out. It's easy, it's cool, it's different. Yeah.
And you can do it yourself. You know what? I first saw it on your head and I wasn't sure how she does it. I was like, she says Bantu knot. I said, what? Bantu knot? What does that
Well, you
mean? All
well,
this
you
motobo.
know, you see, I had cut my hair and I didn't know what to do with it. I'd never had hair that short. So I just said, okay, I'd seen this thing on people's heads. Let me try it. And I did. I'd never worn this as a kid. I never worn this in my country. You know, necessity is a mother of invention.
Say that
And then
again.
when I came to South Africa and I didn't see people with this kind of hair, so I'm like, who wears this hair? I know it's an African hairstyle, but who are the people wearing this style? I didn't see anybody. So I guess
Well,
not a
when
South
you
African thing.
Well, but in Cameroon we do have not exactly like this, but we do it differently. And when you came, I
Okay.
was praying that I hope she's gonna do this thing before she goes, so that I watch her, and then how she did it. And
You
the
should have
last
asked.
hour before you left for the airport, you decided,
Yes.
the universe just said she will do it for you. And I just sat and I watched her do it. And when she was in the plane, I was busy with my short hair trying to run.
Really? But you know what? The reason I did it is because it was easy to travel with. You see, when you
Mm.
travel, I put on my hoodie. I don't have to worry about hair. I don't have to worry about anything. This and a cornrow
especially
when you're
when you
traveling,
wear your especially when you wear your
especially.
hair natural like we do,
Yes, I
right?
mean, this is a easy to go thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So
oh boy, book
I
flying
remember when I
around in
did
this
my
house.
I was saying when I did my first Bantu note, our young authors came in. Cheryl, she came in and said, Auntie Beatrice, you have Auntie Pauline's hairstyle. Auntie Which is what did she teach you?
Oh
I
my
don't know. I stole from
God.
her. Okay, Geraldine is on. Good morning, Geraldine. It must be, I don't know what kind of a morning you have in Washington right now, but we see you. We see you, and we welcome you to our conversation as usual. You are, you've become our regular guest. You should come
Yes,
to the
yes,
studio, Geraldine. We want to have you in the studio once. Let us know when it works for you, and we will love, 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 love to have you in the studio instead of on Facebook. So, P, time to
ma'am.
get into the deep conversation.
Oh,
And I think the
there's a
top
sorry, there's a bug that's bothering me in this house. So if you see me doing crazy
the
stuff, it's
podcast.
trying to get this. The light is on. So gosh, it's just crazy.
Okay, so Geraldine certainly will. I will come check on you, Geraldine. Please inbox me your contact, or how I can get to you, so we can discuss when it is possible for you to join us in the studio. So, P, we're going to be talking about a very heavy topics today. A very heavy topic today. See, my tongue slip when I get into some of these things. Um,
Yes.
Yesterday we started with colonization, and colonization
Mm,
is the birth mother of enslavement. And these are two heavy baggages that we, people of African descent, whether we are on the continent or in the diaspora, it's something that is part of our history. It is part of our history, and quite often we don't even know very much about what it is,
yeah.
and let alone the younger generation. And I think this is so important in who we are, where we come from, and the legacy, our legacy, especially the legacy of the tenacious women and men, the people, the powerful women and men that went through this enslavement over so many years, that it is so important for every one of us to never ever forget, to never ever forget. It is important that even the younger generation know about this, because it has a lot of influence in our lives, and it explains also
Mm,
in very simple terms why, in different parts of the world we have people of African descent who were not born in Africa. All of that is goes as far back as enslavement, and we know that enslavement was not something that was voluntary. My ancestor did not
mm,
ask to be taken across the ocean to the other side,
mm,
and they did not ask to be put under the kind of labor that they were put up, that they were put under, to work for people without being paid, being beaten, and all the things that they went through. They didn't ask for that. They did not ask for that. So in this book
mm,
today, I am looking at I'm looking at enslavement from the eyes of an African woman born on the continent, from the eyes of a mother, from the eyes of a woman who has traveled, an African woman who has traveled, and from the eyes of a woman who wants to know, who is on a journey
mm,
to learn, who wants to know what happened and why that is impacting us today. She wants to see how the divide happened, how the wounds, how deep the wounds are, in an attempt to see how we can attempt to even connect and get to know each other and heal them. And having met you,
mm,
P, having met you, when I was on the journey of writing these books, the conversations that we had gave me the courage to write on this
okay.
topic, even to write on this topic. That the conversation gave me the courage, and I thought, like,
Wow.
okay, I may not have experienced the enslavement. My ancestors, I mean, I don't know how many of my ancestors were taken across the ocean, but I meet you and you and I are talking, and I said, I must just, I'm not an expert on this, but I just thought I want to know. I want to know. I met P. There is a reason why we met, and I must just go on this journey and try to unveil the topic of enslavement from my own perspective. It's very heavy. We can look at it from different sides, but what we're looking at today is just from my little narrow perspective. That is a curious one that is wanting to
Yeah.
understand and to ignite conversations and healing. So I don't know whether you knew this
Yeah.
before.
I didn't know. I didn't know at all. I wish I can remember what we talked about at the beginning. Um, I'm not an expert on slavery, on enslavement either. I know the things I learned in school and I know the ideas that I've had since. as I'm a trained rhetorician. That means I
mm,
look at how, for me, I look at how people do things and
mm,
how people express how they make. I think when you look at how people make things and how people do things, you understand a lot more about them.
mm,
So that's where I come from. And in my line of work, a lot of issues and practices are seen through the lens of Greco-Roman eyes, or the traditions
mm,
of Greek and Rome and stuff like that.
mm,
So I want to shift and reorient that, because if you keep looking at the West to tell your
mm,
stories, you get a different view of your story. And I
mm,
remember as a child growing up, when you heard that my ancestors were slaves, I bought the idea that they were slaves. I came from slaves. And then I realized somewhere along the line, hey, slaves didn't come from Africa. Africans came from
mm.
Africa,
Right,
you know?
right.
And and because in order to make a person a slave, you have to dehumanize a person. You have to
Mm-hmm,
take away their humanity. And one of the best ways to take, or one of the ways that was used to take away people's humanity, was to use language.
mm-hmm,
Slaves, if I call you a slave is a
mm-hmm,
person who's been stolen, who live under the condition of servitude,
mm-hmm,
and some people regard it as stemming from bondage and debt and things like that.
mm,
And it has other insidious meanings as well. Somebody who was mutilated,
mm-hmm,
abused,
mm-hmm,
killed as deterrents to other people. I've always wondered, Africa has all these strong people, so many people. Why didn't they you know do something and kill these people who are enslaving them? And there's so many answers to that. There's so many different little pockets. And I've heard people say, well, why didn't you guys get up and fight back? Yes, we did. People did. Our ancestors did. But when you think about those situations, and you think about other kinds of decimation of people within systems that oppress and kill, you talk about the same thing. We know of other kinds of Holocaust, not just the African Holocaust, which was the enslavement, but we know of the Holocaust with the Jews. Well, you can ask the same question. You see what I'm saying? You can
mm-hmm,
ask the same question. But when you think about power and deception, and people coming from different systems of understanding. I can think of the indigenous people in America. They were welcoming, sharing their land, a different understanding of what it means to own land. And I'm sure in African systems, there was a different meaning for owning land. And somebody said, while people were praying and doing other things, the colonials were stealing the land, because the
mm,
gaze of a colonial is very different from a lot of other gazes. When colonials, from what my understanding is, when they look at your property, they see capitalism.
mm,
They see how to exploit, how to do that. It's not always that that's a system in many cultures. So you see, this and
mm,
these answers are, there's no one easy answer. It's very, very complex. So I
mm.
think I'm going to stop there and let you in. So, and then we can get on with some more of the ideas I need to share, or I want to share, as they come.
Okay. I see our sister Molatello is still on the road. He says, I'm listening from the road. Hi, Dr. P. Hi, B. We're here. We know that you're
Hi.
listening, so you can jump in at any time. You're most welcome. And P, as usual,
Yeah.
I think we just walk our listeners and whoever is on with us through the book again. That's what we always do. Show you what is in the book, and then show you the conversations and the places we go to. And some of the questions that you raised, P, they are in the book. Our storytellers, our three detectives, they asked the story, what did Africans do when other Africans were being captured and taken away? And so in the
Yes.
book, we find some answers, but also much more than that. I failed to look at the statistics today. I've seen a video, a very short video that shows how many Africans were taken from Africa across the Atlantic, to the
Mhm.
Americas. during the time that enslavement lasted. And before we even get there, we know that before the Europeans started enslaving Africans, the Arabs had done that before. There was the Arab
Yes.
enslavement trade that took place before the Europeans came in. So, over a long period of years, Africans have been subjected to enslavement, first from the Arabs and then from the Europeans. So, I want to take us quickly to the book and,
Yes, and
just give us.
let's put a pin in there before I forget.
Mm,
Yes, we know about the Arabs doing that, and one of the things that people who want to say, mm, what should I say? People who push back against the notion that Africans were not players or complicit in their enslavement. Yes, there's a notion out there that Africans were complicit in their enslavement.
mhm,
They say Africans sold each other. They
mhm,
betrayed each other to the colonizers and the robbers and the human traffickers, because that's what I see them as,
mhm,
trafficking in
mhm,
humans. This thing has been old, old, old. And so they say that. And they say, well, Africans used to enslave each other anyway. But what we need to
mhm,
understand, the enslavement that my people went through, this is called chattel slavery. Chattel
mhm,
slavery means that you were counted as horse and goat and sheep,
mhm,
animals. So you weren't even human in the eyes of these people. So whatever people had, I don't know what about slavery, whether people enslaved each other and knew they were, people have tribal wars and the different things, and people capture other people and whatever the case might be. From what I understood, is that I don't remember where I read this, is that when people were captured in wars, let's say village wars or tribal wars, I'm subject to correction. If I make a mistake, it's my mistake. So people within the hearing my voice, don't say I say, because I'm not pulling the sources right now. Um, that people were able to pay their debt. If somebody owed somebody something, and they could say, okay, you have to come and stay at my house, you have to work for me, and that kind of thing. So that person may have to work out their service for what they owed. And then, but in that condition, their children were not slaves. Their children did not become enslaved. The entire generation did not become enslaved. But in the slavery that we're talking about and the enslavement, the slavery system, some people don't discriminate between slavery and enslavement. We think that there's a difference. And
mhm,
people think that in the enslavement institution and process is that you were taken, made, dehumanized, counted with cattle and goods, sold on the block, stripped naked of your humanity, and your children were born into this servitude. Your generations were born into this servitude for 100 years and hundreds of years. So that has a human cost on the African continent, because these people were not going to pick weak people. They're not going to pick stupid people. They're going to pick strong people because they have their agenda. You see, they're not picking stupid people. They're picking people who are artisans, people who know stuff. But to dehumanize them, they didn't care, because
mhm,
you're not going there to build your own house and to do your own mathematics. You're going there to work on plantations, regardless. And some of these people
mhm,
were ruthless, sociopaths and
mhm,
psychopaths and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And
mhm,
so I've met African people, and I know of friends who have talked about this, that when they meet some African people in their experience, that the diaspora blacks, like coming from my lineage, are looked down upon and called the sugarcane
mhm.
eaters.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
I have friends who went to school with some Africans, and they were very haughty, and they look down on people from the Caribbean and say, "You guys, you are sugarcane eaters. You guys look down on, they look down on us. Like they're not from the continent. They're not continental black, so they're less than. So there's all of that baggage that comes with enslavement. Yeah.
Hmm. P, I'm glad that you mentioned that. It pains my heart because by so doing, we're saving the master plan of the
Mm,
colonizers. That is what was intended. We should be divided and wounded to the point where we start fighting each other instead. You know,
mm,
but I also want to say, just like you find people who think funny in every other culture, you find them also in Africa. And
yes.
if one or three or 10 or 100 or 1,000 say that to our sisters abroad, I want to say first, I apologize. And I wish that you don't generalize that because it is not
Hmm.
the opinion of the majority. And when you listen to other
Hmm.
Africans, some other Africans, you will realize that it is not. Look at a country like
Hmm.
Ghana that says we're opening the doors, homecoming. It is
Yeah.
the year of homecoming. I don't think people who open the doors in Ghana, the administration, they think the same way. And I just want you to say, if anyone ever said anything like that to you, you tell them, from me, I say, they are paying the cost. They are the puppet of the system that colonized us. It pains my heart very, very deep to hear such things. So
Well,
I don't
I
know.
accept your apology on behalf of those people. I have not been told that, but these are some of the stories that people have from their experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes from the fact that we don't know our history. It comes from that
Yeah.
fact because if you know what was done, because the person that you're talking like that onto could have been your cousin. You don't even know that you
Mm,
don't know what happened back then. And I think anyone
mm,
who is conscious, anyone who is conscious of history, of the destruction that was put in place here, of that master plan, that person would think seriously. You would think seriously before you even say a word that may hurt a person that looks like you. And because you think you come from the continent doesn't make you any better than anyone who is in the diaspora. And that's my very humble opinion. And I stand by that. So that is the premises on which I wrote the book that we are about to discover right now.
okay, right
So,
on.
and I would just want us to jump into it as usual and see
Mm,
what is in that book. So, come share the screen. This is this one that we want to share. We're
let's go
taking you
be.
through we're taking you through the manuscript again. So this is how it looks like, book six. What is enslavement? And just like P, you rightly pointed out, I decided to title this book "What is Enslavement?" because as when you read through the book, you see that our young detectives are saying our ancestors were not born slaves. If you call them
Mm,
slaves, it means they were born slaves. It means it is their identity. But this is something
mm,
that was put upon them. This is a system of um, destruction of their
mm,
identity, a system of humiliation that was put upon them, and the fact that we today embrace that word and we use it, just easily. I think we got to think twice before we use that word slave. We got to question it, and for me, the easiest way to say enslavement was a way of
mm,
saying my people were not born slaves; they were
mm,
enslaved. Okay,
mm,
so that is right there. And again, we'll just walk through. I like to put in quotes because I like to go look for other people's opinion. People who lived through that time, but also people from our culture, people who were enslaved. Our ancestors who were enslaved, but also people who were part of, who came from the system that was enslaving. So as we go through this book, you see quotations from different set of people because I wanted to pick on their minds to see what some of them were saying if the whole system of the whole white system was for enslavement. So this starts with a quote from Henrietta Tubman, and someone tells me it was not from her. I can't say I've seen this in so many places that said she said this
oh,
word.
Harriet Tubman. Harriet
Harriet
Tubman.
Tubman, yes. So we go as we continue. I found this map of Africa. You see, I always have the links below where I got my information from. The sources are there, but I found this to be very, very, very pointing. Very to the point, very aligning to what I wanted to say with this book. And it says, people say that slaves were taken from Africa. This is not true. People were taken from Africa and were made into slaves. And this is just what P, you just said in the beginning.
Yes.
So we have our usual dedication and then the table of contents. This book has just 6 chapters. So after we meet our narrators, our detectives, we get into the first chapter, which is what is enslavement, how did captured Africans go from Africa to the Americas, What did kids do during the time of enslavement? Who fought for the liberation of enslaved Africans? Um, then there is something about self-reflection, a self-reflection on this book, because after writing it, there was need for a self-reflection on a certain number of things that I discovered during my research. So that said, we are moving straight. Here we have a map that showed how Africans were taken to the different destinations across the ocean to the Americas. Kobe, this is not the talk for you. So
Let me put him
I know
downstairs.
that you're there.
Continue. I'm gonna go take him downstairs.
Okay. So, and then I saw another quote from Toni Morrison, a woman whom I was very, very fortunate to meet in 2006 and to spend some time with. So she says, freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. And I think by this, she means a whole lot of things that, we are aware of, that even when you freed yourself, you were still living in the system that still owned you in one way or the other, that still had full control over you. But also, I guess she's also referring to people who, after freeing themselves, did not know how to go around with the freedom or to deal with the freedom. I'm just brainstorming here, maybe very wrong. And if any one of our ancestors, the descendants of our ancestors who were taken across the ocean, if you're listening to me and I say something that you think is not very right, please excuse me. I am in quest for answers. I'm trying to understand something that happened to my people before I was born. So, and from there, I go to Kevin Bryan, who says slavery is theft of life, that of work, theft of property or produce, theft even of children, and children a slave might have born. And here, in as much as I agree with his quote, I still don't want to agree with the last part of the sentence that says children that slaves may have born, because again, we are talking about enslaved Africans, not slaves. So, acknowledgement, we have the reader's guide that tells you how to best use the book, how you can best exploit the book. It gives you tips and a host of things that you can do. And my preface is always done either from people that are very close to me or from my readers. And this one is from a very young, a 16 years old student from Swaziland. She was the very first person to read this manuscript. And I asked her if she wanted to write a preface, and she gladly did. So I got her in the book. Again, we're building a legacy here, and we want to take people along, as many people as possible. So you'll see familiar faces that you know. Malcolm X here says, anytime anyone is enslaved or in any way deprived of his liberty, if that person is a human being, as far as I am concerned, he is justified to resort to whatever methods necessary to bring about his liberty again. So I just want to be conscious. I want to draw your attention to when Malcolm X speaks. He says when someone is enslaved. He doesn't say when a slave. So I want to be very mindful of this. When people when the conversation comes from people who are from that system, people, I don't want to say people who are victims, yes, let's use that word, then they use the language differently. So I see this. Booker T. Washington says the prime condition of slavery was to keep closed every avenue to knowledge. The Negro had no estate, no family life. His sole inheritance was his body. And like we said yesterday, and in a couple of conversations, this body was systematically abused in many, many ways and exploited. So after the quote, that brief opinions from different people, we meet our storytellers who this time are dressed differently. Again, I always dress them in different African fabric just to show the diversity of our culture in one way. So I'm going from the Americas and from the elderly generation. I pick on Lupita again because Lupita is the one young African woman who makes us proud, not because she won what is it? Is it Emmy or is it? She won
Academy
the
Award.
Academy Award. Thank you, P. She won the Academy Award, but also for her bravery and for the way she articulates things. She doesn't mince words. She says the things the way she sees them. So I love her for that. And the one thing that I question or I regret is the fact that she had to do that movie. She had to play the role of an enslaved woman in what is the film called? P
12 years a
12
slave,
years,
I think.
12 years of slavery.
A
That
slave. 12 years a slave.
12 years a slave. So what
Mhm.
our storytellers are saying here is, do we all have to, the generation that did not go through enslavement, do we have to go through that even in films on screens in order to get a recognition? Do we have to always go through that? What if the things were different way around, and you give us that history in the movie, but let people who enslave play the role of enslaved people, and let's see what it is, because that's when the reflection comes in. If the people who play the oppressor are constant, who were the oppressors, are constantly playing the role of the oppressor on the screen as a form of entertainment, then this is for me how the history continues. It's continuously perpetuated, and there is no real reflection. So that is a very, my humble opinion on that. So I
Well,
went. For,
you see,
yes.
B, um,
Mm-hmm,
then we have to ask the question,
mm,
how, what methodologies would we use to remember? Because we
mm,
cannot not remember. It's a double-edged sword.
yeah, I get you.
Um, some people argue that reenactments keep the story alive, and so that we can never forget. But then you ask yourself, what is the what at what cost? And then if you
Mm-hmm.
put the colonizers to act like they were enslaved people, then you have blackface and you have all this kind of stuff which
No, no,
black people
they don't
rebel
have to
against.
wear blackface. They don't have to do blackface P. I just want
Mhm,
an offspring of someone who was a colonizer to be in the
mhm,
position to, even with their face, let them keep their faces, let them keep their skin color, and just be in that situation, be subjected in that kind of situation that our people went through. For me, that is where
mhm.
the reflection comes in. Yes, someone may say that history is kind of changed, or whichever way
Mhm.
distorted.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
I just think that if we always have to see our people go through the same thing all over and again, it just makes
Right.
me angry. It makes me angry. I ask the question. You're very right to say we need to find, there need to be another methodology on how to keep history alive, but not having to get people to go through that. And I argue that if the children, the offsprings of the oppressors, had to go through that situation in their skin color, um, I mean, it just puts them in a position. We do the conversation will be different, in my
Yeah.
opinion. The conversation will be different because they will feel it, even if they are being paid to go through that situation, because it is a movie, right? They are being paid. When I look around at the
Yeah.
history of Africa, who writes the history of Africa to make money? It's still the great grandchildren of the oppressor.
Mhm.
They write our history. And I'm
Right.
saying we got to write our history. When I look around and I ask the question, um, look at all the people that look like us who are successful, whether they're in America or in Africa, who writes their biography, who writes their biography, who become their author, and who earns money through their story. It's still the children of the oppressor. And I say something is
Mhm.
not right here. Something is not
Mhm.
right. Either we're doing something not right, or they are doing something not right. But I would say all of us are doing something not right. And just because it has been like that doesn't mean for me that it should continue. And we're doing these conversations because we want to change the paradigm. We want to shift the mind. We want to provoke. We want to, provoke new thoughts. How can
Mhm.
we tell history without continuously being exploited or being
Right.
exposed? Okay. How can we do that? I don't have an answer, but I just know if many heads get together, we definitely will find a way of doing that. So the conversation we're doing and the books that we write are just a way of provoking that new way. How can we think and act differently without distorting history, but not subjecting another generation to go through what the past generation was forced to go
Mhm.
through. So, again, the mosquito test quiz is here. The topic is a very emotional one for me, P. It's very, very, it goes very deep inside of me. So I may stutter a couple of times or, miss my words, but it's something that is very deep. When I did research, The more I understand, the more angry I become. But I don't want to keep that anger. But I'm emotional. I try to I keep my emotion and I try to keep the anger out of my system. So
Mm.
I had to go into European history to look for people. What do they think about history? About enslavement. And this one is from Alcidamus, who says nature made no man slave. And so I can see with him on that. Now, the first chapter starts with the question, what is enslavement? And again, the kids, they get familiar, they talk about family situations, they pick it from there, they talk about their grandmother, what grandma will say about enslavement and all of that. And they have their conversation and it carries through. And it is all about enslavement. And P, you mentioned something about
Yes.
chattel enslavement. They
Yes.
talk about that here as well and said it's so bad that because you are enslaved, you were caught, captured, and enslaved. And then in the end, when you have children, your children have to become part of the system. They don't even have the freedom. The children don't even have to choose. You that the fact that children of enslaved Africans had to be in the household taking care of the children of the slave owners, and that young children of the slave owners, even though they're brought up, nurtured by enslaved Africans, these children could grow up and then start abusing them, and this elderly people have to call them master. They had to call them, they had to pay them respect without receiving a single ounce of respect back. So
But
this
you see, oh, no, you see, we can paint it with the words we use right now, but that's not even giving a shadow of the depth and the depravity that
mm,
enslavement was, because these are the kids who were going to be in the master's house, taking care of, they had to be taking care of the master's kids and things like that. But these same kids were abused physically,
mm.
raped and all kinds of stuff. We look at today's world and you hear about so much molestations and so on. Can you imagine what was happening rampant on these plantations?
And
The
especially
only
when
the,
go ahead,
yeah.
P. Sorry.
I mean, that's why I keep thinking to myself, what is this story about, the hatred of the dark skin and the African people, and yet you go rape them and you make babies with them, and then you rape your own children. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
incestuous, nasty kind of a thing. And all
I
of
could
those
see
things
that.
work on the psyche of the black people. But when I talk about enslavement, I am amazed that they had the fortitude to live through that, as depraved it was, and still overcame so that I can be alive here. So I always feel like I owe them a debt of gratitude. But they people talk about trauma and post-traumatic syndrome and blood memory. Those things come down through our blood, you know
Mm-hmm.
so we never quite escape it at the blood level.
Yeah, I get you, and this is the reason why I wrote this book. It was a way of paying my respect, a way of paying my respect. And when you read, you see, what my characters are saying. You will understand, where I came from. So let's go quickly through the book. It's very rich in terms of questions, in terms of issues that addressed. Again, I'm not going to read through them. I'll just take you through the pictures. But most of the conversation and most of the content is in the conversation that my three young characters are undergoing. So I see here they're talking about the underground, the book of Negroes, and the birth of the nation, 12 years of a slave. They're listing some of the movies that have to do with enslavement right here. I think they also talk about roots. P, growing up in Cameroon. Let me stop sharing the screen because this we just
Yeah.
need to. I'll go back right there. Growing
Mm,
up in Cameroon, there was this movie that was a series that was on TV. Roots.
mhm.
Do you know the book by Adolf Huxley? It was on TV. Roots. We were shown that movie, and there was Izaura, there was Kinta Kunte, there were all of them, and you could see how they were being treated. And this was served on national TV as a form of entertainment. Can you imagine that?
Mhm. I
Can
haven't
you
seen it.
imagine that?
I've heard about
It
it, but I haven't seen it.
It's
I don't
something
look
that
at
I have a
like
whole
that.
collection of. I have a whole collection of that movie. I think there's a whole series, and I bought the DVDs. I think there are 8 of them. And when you see what how I said, how who had the courage? Who had the courage? I mean, I love the fact that the book was written and that it was filmed, but to put it on national TV, where you could say it was a form of education, but when you put it on without a background information,
A discourse.
without without a discourse, it becomes like a form of entertainment. And
Well,
it revolted me. It's revolting. And when I bought that
well, I
film,
think
I told my kids, I want you to watch this movie, but I want you to do it when you are past 19. You must do it when you're over 20. Because what you see in this film will have an impact on the rest of your life. Because that's how the movie is for me. In as much as I want to know the details, they just, I don't know. I don't know. So
well, you see,
again,
I think, like you say, Nelson Mandela said, it's left to a generation to
mm,
move that and to do better. So
yeah.
when put out there on media, I mean, media is a very, very big part of the education or miseducation of people, across
Mm,
specters of boundaries and so on. We have to preface the content in a way
mm-hmm,
that it explains, we
mm-hmm,
just have to be concerned about how we consume media, how
mm-hmm,
we become complicit in some of these
mm-hmm.
discourses. And I want to put a disclaimer right now that because we were colonized, a lot of what we do are still colonial practices. It's ingrained in us in as much as we we are cognizant of our background and the deep hurts and things like that. We're still part of that system. We still play in that system. So I'm saying,
Mhm,
so
mhm,
it's a
mhm.
constant. We're never done. Some people, like Bob Marley, say, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. It's
It's
not
in
a
the
done.
book.
People would say, you know what? People would charge each other and say they're not emancipated, but you never, to me, the emancipation is not an end goal. Is a process. Is a process. It's
Mm,
not one done today and onward. I could say, hey, I'm
mhm.
emancipated. No, 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 no. This is an ongoing thing because we come up in the system. We come up in the system. We use so many tools of the system, you know.
Yeah,
And Audre Lorde said, can we destroy the master's house using the master's tools? You know, well, I'm gonna damn well have at it, but with that in mind, do we really do that? You know,
yeah.
so these are
And I think you
tough
mentioned something
conversations.
about, sorry, P.
Yeah, go ahead.
You
Go ahead.
mentioned the language. We mentioned the language before. And I think,
Hmm.
when you become conscious of this history, you want to really watch your language. And the more you watch the language, you realize how ingrained some of the
Yes.
subtle, very subtle messages are in. And you begin to use
Hmm.
the words without questioning them. And by so doing, you perpetuate them. And then the images that is sent to your subconscious mind and what that
Hmm.
does with you, without you even being aware, how that
Hmm.
influences your attitude, your preferences, your choices, your lifestyle,
Hmm.
your decisions, your awareness, your
Hmm.
consciousness. It's just so incredibly powerful when you become aware. And when I think about Black consciousness or the concept of Black is beautiful back then, when I think about the
Hmm.
civil rights movement and all the things that went on along through during the liberation struggle, you realize how much we have to pay attention. The hurt, the deep wound lies in the details, and some of those things that we
Hmm.
don't even see anymore. They've become, like you say, part of us, part of our daily life,
Hmm.
part of our conversation, that we don't even see them, and they continue to influence us, and that is for me where the big damage is. So, P, let me go on
Yes.
Facebook and see this. Geraldine, I think we were
Yeah.
talking about chattel enslavement, and she said chattel
Yes.
houses are still in existence in Barbados. They are tourist
Hmm.
attractions.
Yes.
In the book, as we go through the book, I'll show you a couple of them in Africa
Yes.
as well. So, Geraldine, she says, yes, Africans call West Indians sugar cane eaters. I was called
Yes.
that by experience. Woo,
You see,
woo.
Geraldine, thank you
Geraldine,
for that. Yes.
I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't want to say it's all Africans. I don't want to generalize. And I just want to say some unreflected Africans may say
Mhm.
such things. Someone said, if you think education is expensive, you haven't tried ignorant. Ignorance,
Right.
that is an African problem proverb. And I think that is a
Yeah.
consequence of ignorance right there. Okay,
And
so Mulatelo says this topic is way too deep and painful. Having read the stories of Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman and Mary McLeod Bethune and others like Nelson Mandela who have endured atrocities and triumphed in their time, it makes me realize that human spirit triumphs against all sorts of dehumanization. We can't agree
and
any better with Mulatelo.
and B, I
Yeah.
think that's where we have to live. We have to live
Mhm.
in that space of triumph. We have to be
Yeah.
able to look at pain, experience pain, but don't live there. Because if you
Yeah.
live there, you live
Yeah.
the defeatist life. We have to honor it,
Hmm.
look at it,
Hmm.
understand it, and our understanding is going to unfold over time. What you understood as a child is not what you're going to understand as an adult, and different things.
Hmm.
And we have to forgive ourselves for the places and things we do, and not let a system tell you now, oh well, since you're supposed to be liberated, how come you're this and you're that? We still have choice. People still have choice. So
Hmm.
I don't even castigate the people who are not thinking the way I'm thinking, because that's
Hmm.
maybe that their journey is a different journey. Maybe they're on their way for a
Hmm.
different journey. So because we are born as humans with choices, you know, and it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that because you know you're trying to do something in terms of liberation that you don't have choice. Now you become another slave to you become enslaved to another system where you cannot
Hmm.
be who you are and make the choices you want with your life. Yeah.
I agree totally. And I think that this is when you read the conversation, it's a very liberating conversation. We're going to the place of pain, but we're not with the intention to stay there. Because if you stay
Right.
in the place of pain, you are still serving the purpose. You're still serving that cause. If you stay in
Yes.
the place of pain. And thank you, Mulatelo, for bringing up the aspect of triumph. That is exactly what it is. Knowing our history and celebrating the fact that our ancestors went through this and some of them triumphed. And being able to keep that memory is also the tone in the book. So I'll take us quickly back to the book so that we finish what we started and then we move on to our conversation. So this right here. And this time around, I'll be very, very quick. So, P, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to read all of that. Again, it's for the reader to read through. We just want you to see that this is in the form of a conversation, but where there is a picture, I would like to pick on it. And this picture comes, P, we were talking about the argument that says Africans sold Africans. I want
Yes.
to say that in every system, you always have people who will sell. Even in the Bibles, we have people who sell out other people. This is not an
Hmm.
excuse. It is not an excuse. When I did research, I realized that slavery, I will call it that way, existed in Europe before it came to Africa. Before they came to enslave Africans. There had been other forms of enslavement in the European society, where the
Hmm.
aristocrats, and the people who were deemed to be influential and to have a higher social status, they have servants at home, people who serve them in the form of slavery. But I'm not going to go there because we're focusing on enslavement of
Hmm.
Africans. And I think what makes the difference here, or the conversation here, is in Africa, yes, there were people who were taken as servants or enslaved, I don't know, to work in the household of those who were in social standing, in higher social standing, just like in every other culture. It was in Asia as well. And that was here. And what you rightly pointed out in the beginning was the fact that these people and their families were not taken into enslavement. They were not part of the system. And they still had some dignity. They were not completely taken out of their cultural environment. Their language was
Hmm.
not taken away from them. There was still some sort of dignity here. And I also want to say some Africans, yes, when you know how colonization functioned, what they brought in, how the system was introduced, you will realize that there will always be some people who will betray us, and they will join, align with the system because of some benefits that they expect. Yes, that happened in Africa as well. But I want to say there were some Africans who fought. They fought with every piece of what they had against the enslavement of their people. And one of them is Queen Zinga from, she was the queen of Angola and part of what is today known as the Congo. She fought the colonialists, the Portuguese. She even got the English, was it the English and the Portuguese to fight against each other. She is known to have been one of a great diplomat, a great intelligent woman who fought against enslavement. There was Queen Mother Ya Asantewa. We know her from the story of the Ashanti people in Ghana. She fought against the British. She was the one woman who said, if you men will not fight, I will go out with my women and we shall fight until the last of us falls down. She fought against the capitalization of the Ashanti throne by the British. So I'm not going to go there. Some people know the story of Queen Yasantewa. If you don't know, please go Google her. And then there was the King Mani Congo, the king of the Congo. He fought. Oh, I see. There's a mistake right here. He fought against the people, especially the Belgium, the King Leopold of Belgium. And somewhere there is a quote of him that you hear. He even sent back the gift that the King of Belgium sent to him because he said the agreement was not that you take my people. If you're coming here to enslave my people, this was not the agreement. So I'm sending back all your gift and I'm asking you to stop enslaving my people, to stop taking my people across the ocean. There was King Samori Touré of today's Senegal, who is known to have fought with every piece of his energy until he was captured and killed. But he was the one king that fought against enslavement. So there's so many of them. When you do research, you find out that there were so many who resisted, who fought, who were against enslavement. And I want to honor them in this book as well and in the conversations that we have. So from there, we just take a look at some of the pictures of how Africans were captured, how they were treated. You see women with children on their backs carrying loads and, all of that. This is when they were being loaded in the ship to take them across the Atlantic Ocean to work on the sugar plantation. You see some of them here working on the coffee plantation. And that is the sugar plantation. You see them all there. Some of them, we must say, some of them were working in household while some were working on the plantation. So you had the field enslaved Africans and those who were, working in household and in other places. So here we just have to see the system, how the system was in place, the irons that were used to fasten or to tie Africans in the ship so that they don't have to move. Some of them were on their feet, some on their arms, some on their necks. That was how bad it was. This is a young African man who is beaten. You see the scars on the back. Those are scars of enslavement. And then we're looking at, what people who survived, or people who were intelligent, great African Americans, what they said. And this time is from Frederick Douglass, and many of you will know him. Otherwise, we'll still have another book where we'll be talking very much about him. He says, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Okay, so Martin Luther King says, as long as the mind is enslaved, the body can never be free. Psychological freedom, a firm sense of self-esteem is the most powerful weapon against the long night of physical slavery. So I'll just keep those pages. The history is there. And in this chapter, I think we're asking the question as to how enslaved Africans, captured Africans were taken across the ocean. They had what they call the port of no return. And in most of the countries that are along the coastal region of Africa, these are West African countries, they were those port of no return. This is where captured Africans were assembled from different inner parts of the country and taken to that port. And when you came to that port, it was called a port of no return because you never could return back to where you came from. That was from the space from where you left your culture, you left everything that was familiar to you to be taken across the ocean to where you had no idea about. So, but before we get there, I wanted to honor Sarah Green Kay. She was she. This is what she wrote. The virtue of female slaves is wholly at the mercy of irresponsible tyrants and women, irresponsible tyrants, and women are bought and sold in our slave market to gratify the brutal lust of those who bear the name Christians. So she was a very religious woman, a white woman who joined the abolition movement and fought very, very hard against enslavement. Now, I take you to Cameroon, my home country, where we have one of the ports of no return. This one is in Bimbia. It's in this somewhere in the coastal region of Cameroon. This is where enslaved Africans were taken and then shipped and then taken across the ocean. This one is in Ouida in Benin. This one, you see, this one is set up. It's a tourist attraction now. It's a place of history, like Geraldine was saying. So people come here to commemorate. People come here to commemorate the people who left from here to into slavery. Here is in Ghana. This is the castle of Elmina. It looks like beautiful, but when you go inside and you know the history of what happened in here, you will not really love this castle. And it is interesting to know that castles were built around these West African countries and were used as the place to, normally when you see a castle, you say it's a noble place. It's a place where you go to, be in the company of royalty, to have, to be treated well. But these castles were dungeons. They were dungeons where people were locked down, people were dishumanized, people were beaten, people were, went through all kinds of inhuman treatment before they were taken across the ocean. Now, this one is Gorée Island in Senegal. This is where you have also this fortress here. This is where the port of no return in Senegal was. This island is a very beautiful island. It's one of the only islands in the world that doesn't have cars. If you want to go from Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal, to from the mainland to the island, you go by boat. And all of the island, you can only travel through it by bicycle or on foot. So there are a lot of museums in here, and there's a lot of tourism going on here, especially from brothers and sisters who come from the diaspora to visit some of these historical places. So Gorée Island is one of the places that is very, very much visited in Senegal. So through the story, you also find, I think I found some quotes from Abraham Lincoln, the former U.S. president. His opinions on enslavement. I found them to be very comforting to me. When he says slavery is founded on the selfishness of man, nature, on the selfishness of man's nature, opposition to it, on his love of is his. I can't read because I'm, in some place. Slavery is founded on the selfishness of man's nature, opposition to it on his love of justice. So, P, sometimes I'm very quick in talking because we have a short period of time to go through a book that is very, very intensive. So I tend to kind of stutter because I'm trying to put in as much as possible. And if I'm speaking too fast, please excuse me. I just want to cover this in the time period that we have. I'll give you a taste of what is in the book. You can then get the book and read it at your pace and have the conversations at your pace. So this one is in the Gambia. The Gambia is a very small, tiny country in Senegal. There was also a port of no return there. And it is said that Kinta Kunte came actually from the Gambia. So right down in the history of enslavement, we wanted to look at some enslaved Africans who were able to fight for their liberation. They liberated themselves. And I found the story of Joseph Singay. I think it's in the film Amistad, a very, very powerful one. I found a contra story that someone wrote. And when I did my research, it led me to, I think he's an Asian student at one of the universities in the US. It's in the book. I don't have it in my head right now. But he was picking on Joseph Singay, and what was that he returned to the Gambia and became a slave owner himself. But I say I don't want to distort this history. I want to celebrate him for the fact that he liberated himself, and he was one of the enslaved Africans who did not only free himself, but who took the administration of America to court. If you watch the film Amistad, you see that. and I want to really, really commend him for that. So the story continues. This is in the Elmina in Ghana. There's this memory stone that says, "In everlasting memory of anguish of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. We, the living, vow to uphold this." So I found that in Elmina in Ghana, and that is the place where many people are returning, as many of our ancestors are returning. And here I wanted to uplift Phyllis Wheatley. She was one of the enslaved Africans who rose to a certain degree of acknowledgement. She became a writer and was one of the first Black publishers ever in the US. So I want us to see that some people were able to liberate themselves. They, in spite of all the things that they went through, they triumphed. And the question is, had they not gone through all those things, how great would they have been? You know, if they could be great in the midst of all the inhuman treatment that they had. So this is the Freeman School. That's how the school for enslaved Africans looked like back at the time. I don't know how it looks like. Schools look like today in some of the areas where Black people live. There is a quote from Einstein. Again, I go from culture. I go from my state of an African, of from my mind of an African woman who wants to know. I go into the brains of, try to pick the brains of some of the people that the world recognize and respect, and see what was their opinion on enslavement. And this quote is from Einstein when he says, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live the whole life believing that it is stupid." And we can relate this to, how Africans, Africans who were enslaved, but even Africans today, when people tell you, you can't do this or you can't do that because you're this or you're that or because of your background, I just think we have to be context specific. There's a whole lot of conversation going on in there among my characters that, again, I can't read because we don't have the time. But I want to pick on Saint Josephine Margaret Bokita. She was captured as a young girl in Sudan, and I think she was just like 8 years old. And she was sold into the household of some Italian diplomats. They eventually took her across to Italy. She was taken to places after she was maltreated in so many different ways. So when she got to Italy, she found a solace in the church. She became baptized, and she went into the church and eventually became a reverend sister. She died in one of the convents, and she received the status. She was rose to the status of a saint by one of the popes. So I think she's very much celebrated by some Black communities in the U.S. as their house saint. When you look into the history of the Catholic Church, there is so much that is in there. And if a former enslaved young woman became a saint in that system, for those who are Catholics, I wish that you celebrate the day. There is a day that is allocated for her. It's the day of Saint Bokita. I hope that you will celebrate that day as well in honor of her. So, of course, we have Harriet Tubman, some other quotes from her, from Abraham Lincoln. We have Du Bois, of course. If you know Du Bois and other intellectual African Americans of the time who were part of the civil rights movement and the liberation movement, you will know him from there. And there is another book where we'll be talking very much about him, so I don't want to go in there now. And this one, we're concluding with some quotes from Black people that we respect. This one is from Mandela, who says, "Poverty is not an accident. Like slavery and apartheid, it is man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings." So here we see Claudette Colvin. Quite a lot of people know Rosa Parks, but the very first person to refuse to give up her seat in the bus was Claudette Colvin. That was a couple of years before Rosa Parks. So when we celebrate Rosa Parks, it's also important to remember her. If you haven't heard about her, please Google her. And she's also a very powerful civil rights activist. So some of the quotes are still right there. And in the self-reflection of book 6, my young storytellers or detectives are reflecting on the language, they are reflecting on some of the opinions that are voiced, and they are reflecting on what it means to connect with the diaspora, the importance of connecting with the diaspora. And, because as long as the diaspora doesn't heal, we can heal on the continent. We are so interconnected, and there is just no way that we can think that because we were born on the continent that we are any better. This takes us back to the conversation that we were having in the beginning, or that we are, we're different. We all have a common ancestry. We have a common history. We have a common identity, and it is extremely important for us to realize that and to be careful, not to be careful, but to ignite conversations that allowed us to find that connection again, irrespective of where we are born in the world. And P, you and I, our story, how we met, how we connected, and how much irrespective of the fact that we were born in different parts of the world, we are of the same generation, and we have so much in common. In our conversation, we realize how much we have in common. And that is for me an essence of saying if we connect and we look for that connection, if we look for that most common things, the things that unite us, we will see so much that will keep us occupied, that will be
Yeah.
healing for us than the things that will separate us. So here there is still some quotes from Joanne Adams. You can read them, but I want to conclude this with a quote from Bob Marley. And P, you mentioned that already in the beginning, where he says, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." So, and with that, we have the live vision plan again. We have the power of me worksheet. You have the live vision planning worksheet, and then other Globuntu books that you can, you may want to be interested in. So that was one of the most powerful hours that I have had in the book launches. Trying to go through many years of history in a very short period of time, and just scratching on the surface. So let's go on Facebook again, P, before we wrap it all up and acknowledge, those who are joining us. We see you and we thank you for joining the conversation. So Fepe from France, this is my Cameroonian brother, says, hi, good day to these queens. Much love. Sister Grace Mohetsoe says, I'm watching from South Africa also. She's always on. Sis, we always see you and we appreciate you. Molatelo says again, I have seen the dungeons in Ghana 3 years ago. This tells us about how dark the oppressor's spirit is, because no one can do unto others what the oppressors did,
Did
and
themselves.
have life in their own spirit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Akanke, oh, welcome to you. He or she says, well, our ancestors weren't viewed as humans. They were cattle, and it allowed the Europeans to treat them with all sorts of depravity. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we want to focus here on the fact that we triumph when you see where how the history was, and that we're here today. When we see people like my sister Pauline and a whole lot of wonderful, great brothers and sisters in the diaspora, whose immediate ancestors went through all this dungeon and survived and gave birth to them, and those of us from the continent, when we see the continent is still surviving, instead of how much was taken out of the continent in terms of human beings, in terms of human resources, in terms of relationships, in terms of connections, in terms of emotions, and then in terms of the material that is still constantly being taken out. And this continent is still standing up tall. And when the Europeans go, the Chinese come. When the French go, the I don't know, the Portuguese come. They're coming in and out, and we're still here. When we see people like Mandela, we see people like Patrice Lumumba did not live through this, but what they left behind, the legacy that they left behind, is so powerful. When we see this, I agree fully with you, sisters, that we are here not to lament. We are here not to stay in pain. We are here to celebrate victory. We are here to celebrate tenacity, resilience. We are here to celebrate life. We are here to celebrate high spirituality. And that is the essence of the stories that we are digging, to say, know it and stand proud in it, because we have every cause to be proud. Now, P,
Yes. Yes. I just wanted to say one thing. Um, yes, we have the stories. We come from different backgrounds with a common ancestry. And for me, it's always about, so what? What now? What now?
mm,
So what do you, like I say, I'm a rhetorician. What do you do? What do you build? What do you make? You know? So
mm,
my thing is always, what am I going to make? How am I going to be? What kind of relationships am I going to establish? And when I did my vision board a while back, I have it up there, is to find women with a mission, women with a mission, and support that. So when you came into my life, it was a manifestation of that thing, to support a woman with a mission. And now we're writing books. And I see these books as interventions. They're
mm,
interventions in a narrative, in dominant narratives. And when we intervene in dominant narratives, we lay our stories alongside all other narratives. Because if we
mm,
don't put our stories among those narratives, then some little child, some adult somewhere might think that these stories don't exist. For
mm,
us Caribbean people, and Geraldine would attest to this, our stories are a lot of times they're in the oral culture. So
mm,
I don't want it to just exist in the oral culture. Today we have the social media, we have all these different platforms. So I
mm,
choose to do that. When my time is done, when my work is done or whatever, somebody else is going to pick it up and take it where it needs to go. And I think
mm,
that's what's happening with Africa. It's always a renewing.
mm,
Kingdoms don't last forever. The great kingdoms have risen and they've fallen. And
mm,
who knows? Had Africa been left to what it could have been, you know, it could have risen and fallen and risen and fallen, because that's how things, life, the ebbs and flow of life. But I feel like we have to take the opportunities given us and move with that, you know, the forces of life, how life moves, or even to orchestrate our own paths.
mm.
So that's what I feel.
And I
So
agree totally with you. That's what we're doing here. That is what we're doing here. We went from the book to, going back to the aura. What we're doing here is the aura narrative. And you have social media like Facebook, like YouTube. You are doing aura narrative there while you're writing. And so
yeah,
we have to adopt. We are taking that culture. We're taking that part of our culture into the new system and complementing it with writing, because we
right,
cannot not write today. So that's
right,
for me. It's what our generation is called upon to do. So we all have a part to play. Before we point fingers at others, four fingers are pointing back at us and saying, "What are you doing?" And I think if every one of us, people of Africa, people of African descent, whether on the continent or abroad, if we all put in our small bit, whether it's just telling the story of our family, the story of our community, the story of our
hmm,
grandmother, the story of our country, the story of our continent, or the story of the diaspora, if we all chip in from the perspective that we are, from where we are, we will be doing ourselves a favor. We will be honoring those
right.
who gave their life
Can hear you.
life that we have today, that we will be also paving the way for the future, for the next generation. And if we don't do that, I think the next generation will blame us heavily. So here we are inviting every one of us,
What
to,
happened to your sound? Your sound is all messed up.
oh my God, I hear myself, and can you still hear me?
Very, very low.
Oh
You
my
tapped
God.
something. You were, yes, you're now
No,
loud. Yeah.
oh, I
You
touched
tapped.
nothing. Um, Something
Yeah.
happened. Okay.
Yes.
So what I was saying is that we must just assume our responsibility and do our bit. There's that quote that say, if you think that what you're doing is not important, then you haven't spent the night with a mosquito. So the little bit that you can do is important. It is needed. African history is largely untold, and the history of people of African descent also. So we have the responsibility on to dig out those that we can, as long as we're here, and to tell it so that we can invite someone to tell his or hers as well. So, P, we can talk until next week, but we're not going to do that. We're going to close this one for
I
today
can talk
because
until next week. It's nice.
we
And
are
some
over
people
the
have
hour.
jobs. Some people have
Yes,
jobs like me.
right.
Yeah.
We are over the hour, and I just want to remind you, if you're on Facebook, please, you can share the conversation. You can invite your people to have a watch party, whatever. The videos are on there, are out there for you. If you want the books, you're very, very welcome to visit www.globuntubooks.com. And tomorrow we're going to have an exception, tomorrow and after tomorrow, because the hosts are our young learners and Ubuntu young authors. They are at school. So we'll be doing the book launch tomorrow, which is I Know My Africa from A to Z. It's going to be a long journey at 3 o'clock, not at 1 o'clock. And the day after, which is on Thursday, we shall be doing the ABC affirmation and the main word affirmations, still with our young authors, again from 3 p.m. after they come back from school. So we want you to make that slight change.
What are you
The rest of
doing? You're
the
touching something. What are you
no,
touching? It's
look at
making a
my
lot of
hands.
noise, and it's
Look
the
at my
sound went
hands.
down. I don't know
Okay,
what's
is it
going
back
on.
up now? Is it up now?
Yes, yes. Keep
Okay,
your hands
so I'm
right
going to
there.
keep my hands now. Keeping my hands now. So book lunch tomorrow and after tomorrow is going to be from 3 o'clock because we'll be doing it with our learners who are in school, our young authors. So we beg you to bear that with us. And well, so P, it's time to say I can't keep my hands like this for the rest of the day. It's time to
Yes.
say goodbye for today. It was a pleasure
Thank you
having
for
you.
watching. Yes, and
Yes,
thank you for allowing me to be on this platform. And to our viewers, have a good day. Yes, and if you're at night, have a good night too. Thank you for watching.
goodbye.
Bye.